Hey everyone, I'm David Room. Just doing a quick lunch break programming stream today. I've got to get back to my real job soon, but I've been wanting to stream for a long time, just haven't gotten around to it. Now's the time. So I'm working on, since the summer, I've been working on some high detail, I call it high detail, uh, more like realistic 3D scenes using my ships that I'm creating with Python code. And the current thing I'm working on is a number of scenes, and something that I'm trying to do is figure out how to do good, um, interesting looking, but somewhat physically informed space lighting. So we'll just get right into the code. I'm going to get some music started, and I'll show you what I have so far. And what we're going to try to do today is kind of update some defaults in the lighting and compositing to move towards a more realistic, very bright uh, space lighting. And hopefully, the end result won't look too much different than what we have now, but there's going to be a few advantages, I think, to having um, this more realistic lighting setup that I'll talk about. So let me get some music started. Listening to some white bat audio as usual here. I hope everyone who's tuning in has a chance to take a little break from work and work on something fun and creative and interesting to you. And if you're catching this later, I hope that you can work on your own project while you listen, or this inspires you to work on something of your own. So let's get into it. So the current way that everything works in my project here is that I have Python code that creates these various ships and models, and then also have some Python code that uses this kind of custom Blender interface that I made to be able to set up scenes in Blender, and can load models, set up lights, and set up node trees and stuff for different things. So I've been working lately with setting up compositing. So currently, um, when I load this up, and this will take a little longer the first time, there's some flags so that we can disable that will make this loading process faster next time. But we're basically loading these models, building the scene, and looks like this. We have a camera set up and everything, and the rendered view looks like this. I have this real stars background, and the issue here is this. So let me actually just turn the compositor off. So that doesn't enter into things. So the issue is this. Right now, I am not doing any kind of exposure adjustment. And I have the sunlight strength set in kind of an awkward place where it is like borderline. It's like, oh no, I've goofed up my camera. It's like borderline too bright to not use exposure, which I'm not currently doing any kind of exposure adjustment either in render settings or anywhere else. So you can see I'm using cycles render right now, and the exposure is just set to 1. And the problem is that, yeah, it's the scene is overall very bright, and the material that I have on these things is very dark. So like if we look at this material in material preview, it's just extremely dark. It looks black. And oh, this is running really slow for some reason. Oh, it's still compiling stuff, that's why. Okay, so that's funny. And you know, what I wanted to do when I was building this script out that generates this scene is like, I wanted to just get something going that looked good first. But I think the real way, man, Blender is struggling here. The real way that I want to do this is I want to have a material that looks good in material preview and looks like you would expect under low light. But then also when I want to do one of these outer space type scenes, I might have to quit Blender here. When I want to do one of these outer space scenes, I should have a compositor setup that supports that as well. So the solution, I'm just gonna actually, that's interesting. The solution is going to be to add a exposure node to our compositor setup. I've already saved the original blend file. I've got a backup of that, so we're good to go. Let's just dive in and fix this, or not fix it, but like implement this new functionality. And so this is my custom Blender interface. It basically you generate this file that contains all of the information, kind of like objects that represent a series of commands or things to load into Blender, and then like different updates to materials and stuff. And just to make this faster, I'm going to disable the auto smooth angle. That will make this load a lot faster. So if I run this again, this will load almost instantly now, except for those lights. And I'm actually going to swap out the stars for something that loads quicker as well. So we'll do that. So this star background is a texture. It doesn't play as nice with the camera, but it works okay for testing. Okay, so that loads a lot faster. Now let's look at our compositor setup. So let's arrange all of these here. So we have a really simple compositor setup here, and we just have a couple of different view layers that I'm not really using. We're combining these together, and then this is kind of the interesting stuff that's going on here. So we have a lens distortion, glare, and then we combine in film grain, and then we have our compositor output, and this is just a leftover node that we don't need. So what we want to do here is we want to add an exposure node here in between the glare and the film grain. And I'm just gonna quick double check and make sure that that is what I want to do. I believe that it is. I've got some notes here that I'm working off of. So yeah, I did some research about this the other weekend, and I've been meaning to stream about it when I get it going, but I haven't got the chance. So yeah, we want to do we want to do this after the glare and before the film grain, because that's kind of like where in a real camera the exposure node would go. And we're gonna have to make some other adjustments. But now there's other places we could do it. We could adjust exposure in the color management, but that's not like really very real. And there's the film exposure in cycles, but then that doesn't work with Eevee, and I want something that kind of works with both cycles and Eevee, so I think this is the place to do it. So what we want to do is we want to be able to set the sun to a realistic strength, and that is going to look something like this. Instead of 100, it should be like 1361, I think, is like the value for the irradiance of the sun. And this is just like way too bright, right? But then if we come in here and we add an exposure node in here, knock this down to like 0.2, let's see here. Let's just bring up the compositor here. Actually, should be probably something like way down. Could be negative. Yeah, I think it's actually supposed to be negative. Yeah, so it's like -5. Yeah, because it's like some kind of logarithmic thing. So when we bring the exposure down to like -5, then this starts to look more like what the materials look like. I'm going to try turning on material preview again and see if that, hopefully it won't freeze up again. Okay, good, it didn't freeze this time. Yeah. Now what we want to be able to do though is we want to be able to still, like, because we want this sort of space look where things are a little bit blown out. So, you know, probably we want something like an exposure of -2, like -4 or something, where we still get some glare. And then if the glare is too strong at this point, then we can adjust the glare node. But I might just leave the glare node the way it is. So my tendency with a lot of this kind of like effects stuff is I tend to not want to have it be very strong at all. But I think it's better, like for art pieces, to maybe like err on the side of having these effects be a little bit too strong. So we're gonna go that way rather than the other way. And this is all programmatic. We can dial things back and adjust things with code later. So okay, so basically what we want to do is we want to get this exposure node into our compositor setup, change our sun value and our planet light to reflect this like more realistic setting. And then we can play around with like, you know, other colors for the ship too, because, you know, I have this really dark color on it right now, and with this exposure control we can get more like normal colors to work better. So me just check something quick and then we'll get started. Okay. All right. And we're going to do some refactoring too while we're at it. So okay. So this is our script that generates this Blender file, and I want to move this compositor stuff to compositor module. So this argument here is going to be specifying like the name or ID of the node that the sort of like default compositor setup that I have would output, or be like the final node of interest that should be hooked into these new updates. So we've got to invoke this guy now with default. Okay. So now we're also going to do a couple things here. So I want to get rid of this sun energy thing here. So we can just save this like And I'm going to try to leave more notes in my code about like the process of things here. So saying, and this particular script is kind of like, I've got several of these high detail projects, but this is kind of like the main script of this kind of round of work I'm doing on this. So I'll be documenting a lot of this stuff here. And the thing that really is inspiring this is I started doing some work with like adding decals or like image textures for things like logos and markings and stuff onto the ships. And under this setup, it's like they have to be like, to get any kind of color, it's so bright that it like just sort of glows, and it shouldn't look like that. And I revisited some of my references, and I was surprised too to see, like, I've been looking at the visual effects in The Expanse as kind of a reference. I don't like everything about that, the way that show looks, but a lot of the space scenes in that show are actually quite dark. They're not really too blown out. They don't look too glowy or have too much glare. So we definitely want to be able to make scenes that aren't, like, if we want them to look blown out, we can, but they shouldn't have to look like that, right? We want to be able to control and have more even lighting if we want to. So I think what we're doing here is going to be a step in that direction. So we got rid of the sun energy here, and I'm gonna make a constants class here where a bunch of this stuff is going to go. And and the physically correct number that I came up with in my Googling was 1361. So let's go here. We're also going to have to adjust the strength of the stars to compensate for this exposure correction, but that's something, a bridge that we'll cross when we come to it. Okay. So, let's see, do I have environments imported here? Yeah. Okay, so here we're going to use and this, so I was doing 5, so we'll change this to be 5% of the new sun strength. And I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if any of this planet light stuff that I'm doing really makes sense, but we can always revise. Okay, so now let's add that note. Node. So Um, the way this works in my Blender interface is I have something called updates, which are like sort of sequences of operations or changes that you would make to a node tree. And node trees are used in several different things in Blender. They're used for, I believe they're used for geometry nodes, they're used for shader nodes, and the compositor, which is what I'm using them for here. So I've come up with some different ways of doing some of this stuff, but we're just going to stick with what we're doing here. So basically we want to add a new node, and it's going to be called exposure. And I don't know what the type of it's going to be offhand, but we'll actually probably figure it out with this. So compositor node exposures looks like what it's going to be called. Forget what the attribute looks like. We'll tweak that once we get it in here. So we'll just say to do strength. And some of these things I should actually bring up as kind of like constants at the top of this. So let's just do that right now before we forget, as long as we're in here. Distortion, dispersion, because like maybe we might want to make these arguments or constants or something at some point. Right now I'm kind of just looking at what's the simplest thing that I can do that looks good, and then we'll tweak from there. Something that I can always do too, right, is I can use this to generate a Blender project, and then if I have, you know, like little changes I want to make, I can make those manually and save a Blender project. So this doesn't have to be perfect, it's just so this is the film grain factor. I'm just doing like the dead simplest, dumbest film grain thing as well. So I'm gonna kind of put these in order that they appear. So exposure is going to be something like -4 and maybe 4.2, and then we have to add the proper links in here. So we're going to go from lens distortion into glare, and then instead of glare into image, we're going to go from exposure blur, actually blur, yeah, blur image to exposure image, and then from exposure image into mix for the film grain. Okay. Alright, let's load this up and see if we're in the right ballpark, and then we'll get this in. Something I've been working on too is trying to get better error messages too, so if we don't get everything right the first time, it should be a lot easier to debug than it might have been in the past. And it looks like everything worked, and we should see it look really blown out. Yep. Okay, now if we go into compositing, there we go. Arrange. It's like, it's weird how this node arrange works. It's like I have to have, if I have them all selected, it doesn't come up. Okay. Now, so here we have our proper arrangement, right? Glare into exposure. Just double checking. What? So we want to after glare and before grain. Okay. And so we can tell here what the name of this argument is if we set it. So let's set it to -4.25, and then if we go under scripting, oh, okay, so that's actually one of the inputs. So oh, okay. And let me just see. We should be able to see what it's actually named to. I think if you go like this, it won't work. But if we go like this, inputs, exposure, it will work. Yeah, and let's just make sure. We call it, say, -7, that's straight out, but yeah, okay. So it's going to be an input called exposure. Okay. So, exposure node, exposure. Okay. So, exposure input equals exposure, and value equals exposure. Okay. And then at some point I'm going to automate it being arranged nice. That's something I've done for some other aspects of this, but okay. So now let's see, moment of truth. Yeah, okay. So this looks like we want it to now. And do we indeed have a very, very bright sun? Yes, our sun strength is 1361. Our planet strength is 68, so that's very, very bright compared to how it was before. You've got a tasteful amount of glare and sort of blowout on stuff. But like this doesn't look... What I was seeing before is that like these decals, they just looked like they were glowing, you know. It was so bright. And this kind of, you can kind of see it here a little bit too. It kind of looks dark, you know. Like if you look at the material preview, we now see this is extra dark because if we actually, yeah, okay, here we go. That's the setting that I want. So I could go like this. I can see it in the camera turned off here, and then if I go over to material preview, yeah. So like this is like the, if you could think of this kind of like the actual color of this ship under normal lighting. The rendered view, let's see here, under the camera, it looks bright. It looks like bright light, but you can see that it's dark. And we could probably, okay, and let's see if I can figure out how to get these nodes arranged right this time. So let's just select one. If I go under arrange, yeah, arrange all. Okay, there we go. I could probably knock this down even more, like if I go to -5. Then that really starts to capture the dark color. Now, okay, so here's the problem now: is our stars are dark. Let's see if we can come up with something that sort of fixes this. So let's arrange all nodes here. So this is the node setup that we're using for the background when we use the texture. And see, I have all this strength stuff, so I should be able to just bump this up to like 1,000, and boom, yeah, we're back in business here. Let's actually just check. Maybe let's take a look with the real stars background and see how those look, and we'll investigate a little bit. And I think my default exposure is 0, yeah. So I don't even have to do, I'm gonna actually just get rid of this because we don't even want to be messing with this here. Okay, so yeah, let's look at the real stars version and see if that plays nice with our new exposure setup, or if we need to bump the strength of those up somehow. The one downside to this is that things are too bright when you're looking at the rendered view without the compositor. But I feel like the compositor is so important in like getting things to look like you want them to, that it's kind of a moot point. Oh, and my my engine glow needs to be brighter now too. So that's the other thing. This is too dark now. Okay, yeah, so these are quite dark. Let's take a look at the star group, and I have some control over this. So, and let me actually just check here what I'm doing already. So when I do real stars, I'm changing the brightness fall off which, okay. So this star size thing, that's like, it lets the stars stay the same size under different view stuff. Oh, max emission. See, we want to bump this up to like 1,000. And probably, let's see here, 10 to 1. Yeah, we want that to be like 1,000. And then we want the brightness fall off to be, because we want to see more stars, so we want to knock this down to like 1. Yeah. Or actually, no, it's the let's see here. There's a couple different settings that I was messing with here. Scale FOV value is the scale. That goes into okay. So this, I think, should be bigger. Let's see here. What was my value for this? Scale up movies. 0.2. Yeah. There's a way with this basically to equalize the star size. Like higher values of this. The problem with this is the stars get too big, right? They get bigger and bigger. This kind of like linearly scales them up, which we don't want. But we might be able to see. Actually, I think knocking this down to 1 is probably what we want, because that kind of equalizes the brightness. If I do 0, nope, I want to do 0. I increase max emission. If I increase this to like 10,000, that gets super bright. I just in general want to equalize the brightness between different things, and equalize the size. Like, this might be realistic under some model, but this guy? No, that's a position thing. Yeah, I gotta play with this a little bit more to figure out basically how to just in general equalize the size, because increasing this, like I want to go a direction that equalizes the size and brightness between the different stars. Like probably basically undoing a lot of this stuff here, but and probably maybe just making that really small would kind of do it too. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, because if we turn off the compositor, yeah, see, we're losing a few stars just to them being like not bright enough at all. Maybe I can just crank the emission way up and kind of get the same. They all should be really bright, in my opinion. And I mean, it's hard to say what we actually want here. But in general, I don't care about like the stars being completely physically accurate. I want them to be somewhat based in reality. So for sure, max emission being bright. Yeah, higher scale FOV is gonna help. See. Yeah. Okay, so probably we want max emission to go up to like 10,000. Brightness fall off maybe to be like 1. Yeah. Okay. Submission. Okay. And that's really the main thing that we need to change. Okay. So, whoops. Okay. So let's just get this in here and then we'll be done for the day. So max emission name is going to be max emission, and I think it was like 1 to 100. Max emission value equals, let's see, so like the default was 100. We want this to be something like 10,000. And then actually let's just grab our engine material quick to fix that. Shucks. Okay, that's in this particular one file, so we can update it there. Alright, let's see if we got the node name right here. So I got the name wrong. It is max emission 10 to 100. Okay. Let's see how it looks. Yeah. So you can see the stars there. This guy's really bright. I could put some kind of like I could put some kind of like master clamp on that guy, and that probably would help. Yeah. But this generally looks like what we want. Let's get that drive material brighter, and then we'll be done. So this should be, yeah, this strength should be something like 30 at least, because we're about 10 times stronger. Oh, yeah. Let's do 50. I want it to be bright enough that it glows a little bit, you know. Our radiators could be brighter too. We've lost some brightness on the radiators. Emission factor could be like 100. Yeah. And I mean, I think let's just take a look at like what we still might be too bright here. Like, let's just take a look at what another yeah, we're definitely still like in glowy, blown out territory. So depending on, you know, what kind of colors we wanted to actually use here, we might have to adjust the glow a bit. I mean, like, even if we brought it down, I think I didn't adjust any of this other stuff. If we brought it down to like 0.1, I bet that's gonna look a lot better. Yeah. So we still have a bit of a blown out space look, but you know, we've got a lot of like nice bright colors. We've got some glare and some glow, but it's not like, it's blown out, it's not glowing, right? And here we can actually see, I couldn't get, you can't get this kind of look with these sun values without adjusting your exposure. That looks awesome. Let's try blue here. Blue is hard. Get it more even. We've got some really bright stars now. And if we bring this up to like -4.2, yeah, we can get that. And we can get other, we can get some other effects too here. Like if we go under the, if we go under the color, let's see, where's the color management? We could change this to like very high contrast and get a little bit more, like, we can get a little bit more oomph without having to like futz with the lighting. Low contrast gives a look kind of like that. But yeah, our AGX actually kind of looks a little bit more modern, I think, than Filmic. So something like that. I think like this is like, I feel like we have a wide, we've got like physically correct lighting, and we've got a wide range of values that we can, and settings we can play with at this point that look good, right? So this is the point we wanted. Let's bring that red back. That red looked really cool. And a nice bright red. And then see if we go back now to if we disable, yeah, it's super washed out. But then if we go to material preview, this looks like, okay, this looks reasonable. It's not super duper dark. Cool. Okay. I think that's enough for today. We made our changes. We did a little refactoring. We did some really good exploration of some other issues that are going to come up, like the star stuff might have to be adjusted. But overall, you know, it's a step in the right direction that doesn't really change the look too much, but I think gives us more flexibility, and it means that we don't have to use such dark colors to get something that looks good. You know, like this is kind of what I've been hoping to see, is like if you have sort of a gray ship, you get this nice range of colors that range from dark to kind of blown out, dark to sort of blown out looking, and I think that's what I've been wanting to see. And a nice range, we can get something that looks really good here. Yeah, this looks like a nice space. Oh, that's cool. The shadow of the planet light on the front of the ship. It actually probably even reduced the planet light strength down quite a bit here. Get something a little bit more subtle. Yeah. See, like, this is... I'm just... With these changes, I'm able to play around with stuff easier and find nice settings that look reasonable. Look reasonable and cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who might be watching. I had a good time on my lunch break. I hope that you had a chance to work on some of your creative projects, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.